Welcome to episode 7A of Successful Demo. In each episode, we'll analyze the theoretical and practical aspects of one or more newly released cards. Today, we are going to look at the Shaper AI Breaker, Maven. Now, when I first opened Pack 3 Mars and looked at the stuff in it, I immediately dismissed Maven because I just saw 2 credits to break one single ice routine and I'm like, no, that's too inefficient. That's not competitively viable. I glossed over it. Fast forward to last weekend where I played again. I met up with my local netrunner group, and yeah, I kind of got stomped by someone playing Maven. So yeah, well played to my opponent there. Turns out this card is definitely more powerful than meets the eye at first glance. Still, to make use of it very well, you still need to analyze the limitations of it, and in this video we'll do so, and then try to come up with a deck that covers these limitations. First and foremost, as I mentioned earlier, 2 credits per set routine is way too expensive, so your deck needs to be able to make a lot of good money in order to use Maven properly. Secondly, another big problem I have with this breaker is that it is anti-synergistic with itself. It requires you to have a lot of programs installed at once because without it you are not able to get enough strength to break most ice. As I mentioned with my earlier video where terminal directive cards where I went through Savant for example, I said that the magic number was 6. You want your breaker to be at least 6 strength so that you can deal with the nasty, especially code gates nowadays, like your DNA trackers, your archangels and so on. So you need to have at least 6 programs installed. That entails having at least 6 MU or something similar. But the problem is Maven already takes up 2 MU by itself. So how are you going to get 6 programs out? That's going to be really tricky. One way to do this is to use deck deer, just like with Savant. If you host Maven on deck deer, you're removing the 2 MU, the 2 MU that it usually takes up. And not only that, deck deer also counts towards the +1 program for Maven. So Maven on deck deer would be base 2 strength and you have 4 memory slots left. So this is one way you can get up to 6 strength. My biggest problem with this setup, however, is that if you're going for a deck deer Maven setup, you may as well just be playing Savant. Think about it this way. All you need is 2 cards, deck deer, Savant, and there you go, your Sentry and Code Gate solution is set. Whereas with Maven, even if you have deck deer and Maven, you only have a base 2 strength AI breaker. You need to get a lot more programs out if you want to be able to start breaking ice with Mavens. And that's a big problem. It has a very high setup overhead. A lot higher than deck deer Savant. So because of this, I chose not to go the Shaper route. No, not going the deck deer route. Instead, I'm asking myself, instead of setting Maven's MU to 0, I'm asking myself, what 0 MU programs are there out there? Can I use them in my deck? And that's when I realized that a certain runner has access to a lot of 0 MU programs. That's right, we are going to use Maven as a complementary breaker in Geist. Cue subtle transition into Geist deck building video. Now I know a lot of you viewers out there absolutely love Geist, and well, I actually in fact do love Geist myself. Geist is a very interesting runner, and the biggest reason why I love Geist so much is that on multiple occasions, when I attend regionals, I end up facing Geist decks that just completely get steamrolled by me because I fast advance too quickly and win the game before they can even get themselves set up. Good guy Geist, always donating me free regional wins there. Nah, just kidding. But now we have to build a Geist deck ourselves with Maven and the Cloud Breakers, so we'll actually have to build this one from scratch because I'm not very familiar with Geist myself. We start off with the programs as mentioned earlier, and we'll work our way up. The first thing we need to do in the Geist deck is to include the mandatory cards, because Geist is a very specific runner that needs those synergistic cards in order to really maximize his potential, ID potential and everything. So let's start by putting in the Tech Traders, which synergize with his ability. Click trash can compression right there. Fall Guys, this are one of the best trash can abilities in the whole game. I mean, influence free. Sports Hopper, this is amazing draw. And speaking of draw, we also want Street Peddlers. If you're not playing 3 off Street Peddler in your Geist deck, you're doing it wrong. We are going to play Levy because we probably need more than 1 run through our deck, and it's like kind of like prepaid Cape. The second run through your deck is going to be it's going to feel super good because you have all 3 tech traders set up. You're going to be able to run through your deck and gain lots of money and tempo at the same time. Because we're running Levy, we need one same old thing, which conveniently is a trash can. What else? Spy camera. This is your R&D pressure card. The number may vary, but as a general rule of thumb, I would say 5 spy cams is usually the minimum you're looking at. 6 would obviously be ideal, but I think that deck slots will be a problem here. So that's R&D pressure. HQ pressure is legwork. I think 2 legworks in any criminal deck is non-negotiable, especially for Geist. The only reason you would negotiate that is if you're running some other HQ pressure card like Sneak Door Beta, Gauntlet, etc. We are not, so 2 legworks have to go in. And that about does it for the mandatory cards. Arguably, I say Siphon is just about as mandatory a card. You need Siphons for some matchups like CI if you want to stand a chance even. So let's put Siphons in. And if you're running Siphons, we might as well run Aaron Maroon. 2 copies seems fine. If I'm running Hostage, I could go down to 1. But I have a feeling I won't have enough space for Hostage just yet. Given that I'm already on 36 or 45 cards, I only have 9 deck slots remaining. And we still have quite a bit of influence to spend. Quite important to take note of that. Now, looking at Maven, we want to start building around this breaker. The problem with Maven is that it's still really expensive to break the ice. Even though the Tech Trader engine is pretty good, we must not forget that the setup overhead is still very high in terms of number of clicks you need to spend drawing through your deck manually the first time and installing all these breakers to power up Maven. So we need some way to burst up in money quickly. And well, we are criminals, so we actually do think of Temujin here. So I'm gonna actually play 3 Temujin here. Even though it's a good card, not everyone agrees that Temujin is an auto 3 off even in Geist, and there's good reason for that. But for me, I think Temujin is fine here, and it also helps in your asset spam matchup just a bit because it gives you the money to trash assets when a normal Geist deck would just completely ignore assets because normal Geist is too poor for that. Right, so we have Temujin contract. It only makes sense to synergize the run-based Temujin with Desperado. So we're going to run 2 Desperados because we only have 2 core sets. I don't know. So we have that, and now we have 4 deck slots remaining. Now, I did mention earlier that I love Geist because he gets steamrolled so easily by fast advanced decks. So why not let's include some anti-fast advance in our deck. We're going to play a Clot. No, we're not going to play Clot. We're going to play the Source. The Source is basically, I mean, if there's one home for the Source, it has to be in Geist. You're already running 3-4 guys. Why not run the Source as well to prevent fast advanced decks from doing their shenanigans? And since we don't want to trash the Source when we are stealing agendas, it only makes sense to run Film Critic as well. So that covers all our influence, and we have 2 deck slots remaining. Hostage looks like a very, very tempting include here, but there's one very important thing that we have to think of when building a Maven deck, and that is we need to enable Maven by installing lots of crowbar shifts and spikes, but we can only install so many of these cloud breakers if we have no extra link. Now we do have 3 sports hoppers, but don't forget on our first pass we'll probably be sacking sports hoppers for the draw. So we need more link, especially since we're not running Forger. We need to find some other source of link, and that's where Maxwell James comes in for us. Good way to pressure remotes while at the same time giving us the extra link to enable cloud breakers. So now we have 4 link in our deck. That should be fine. And yeah, 44 cards. That should be about it. We could put a hostage in here. It seems very good with all the connections. But there is actually one more card that I would like to have in this deck. I think Geist is going to have a lot of problems in the early game, especially if the fast advanced decks decide to just jam agendas in remotes and score them while you're busy digging for your one-off Maven. Don't forget, we have no special orders, so if the Maven's stuck at the bottom of the deck, tough luck. And if your cloud breakers don't come up in time, you might not be able to contest Big Ice. So the usual solution against Big Ice is Dean Lister. Normally this is a 3-off in Geist decks, but I think we can afford to play just 2 because Maven should cover us for the mid to late game, so we don't need that many Dean Listers. Just a couple to get us through the early game. However, this just does push us above the card limit, so we'll have to start cutting cards. Oh man, finding cards here is really, really hard. And we are already running only 2 Desperados, so yeah. We could cut 1 account Siphon, that's an option. We could cut 1 Aaron Maroon. And yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do here. We're gonna cut 1 Aaron Maroon and call it a day. So let's see if we can pilot this deck to victory. What do you know? literally the first game I'm up against fast advanced Tennin. Wow. I'm not saying I'm going to auto win this game. I'm just saying the source might end up being really useful here. Okay, so I keep my opening hand because it's Temujin Contract. I know this sounds very cheesy for a criminal deck, especially coming from Geist, but because I'm up against Tennin, I actually want to get the Temujin turn 1 so that I not only get good early money to set up, but more importantly, so that my turn 1 I'm able to deny Tennin's ability. You reckon that the opponent would definitely ice up archives here if they find their third piece of ice, so it's going to be a bit harder to stop Tennin from there. But hopefully they use their good ice on centrals, so hopefully the archives ice is something useless, like, I don't know, Yagura, Aiki. I don't mind taking any of that. The one ice I'm really afraid of, however, Cortex Lock. You never know, and you don't want to get cheesed out by a turn 2 loss to a Cortex Lock. So what I'm going to do here is get a break on the table in the shift before running. Now I know I wouldn't get flatlined by Cortex Lock either way, but better to have the shift on the table than for it to get sniped by Cortex Lock. So I'm going to drop it here, and I'm going to encounter Colossus. Well, maybe I shouldn't have installed the shift. I was expecting that if it was Cortex Lock, I would keep the shift, but I end up losing the shift because I installed it. So I wasted one click installing the shift, and only to have it trashed by the Colossus. Damn, I got completely outplayed there. Man, my opponent's doing very well. But hey, that's one Colossus on an irrelevant server. I'll take that any day. Honestly, I'll take that any day. I do deny Tennis ability because it didn't end the run, and I'll clear the tag here. Because I'm going to install a lot of resources. Might as well clear the tank now rather than later. But yes, as I said, I'm very, very happy that the Colossus is not on Central. I said at the start of the game this is going to be a bad matchup for me. And even though I know I have the source, it's still a bad matchup because if they're running Colossus, which I've now confirmed they are, they can easily wall me. My breakers cannot be I cannot pump my breaker strength, as in they don't have credit to boost strength clauses on them. The cloud breakers don't have that, and Maven doesn't have that either. So in theory, a highly advanced Colossus can easily wall me out of one server. That is something I need to keep in mind. But of course my opponent doesn't know this yet. So yes, I'm actually very happy to see the Colossus on archives. 1, that is one less server that I have to worry about being walled from. 2, that's 6 credits invested into an irrelevant server. There's no reason for me to run archives again other than to get 4 Temujin money. You'll notice I dropped a spy cam here, but I'm not going to use it because I don't have tech traders up. The cost of doing a turn 1 Temujin is that I did not start with any tech traders, which is normally what you mulligan for as Geist. While I do have good money now, which allows me to spend most of my clicks drawing, I do have to worry about the fact that I can't really use any trash cans right now because they are not generating me enough tempo, which is a problem. Because you want to use as many trash cans as possible to draw into the rest of your deck, but now that I can't do that, I'm forced to use regular clicks to draw, which is going to cost me tempo. Now my opponent is going for the spread advancement strategy. 1 advancement on every ice so that they can get mass commercialization off. And here they get an IPO off. So now they're super rich. They threaten all sorts of nasty ice, especially DNA tracker, which I just spy with spy cam. So I'm worried about that. I do not want to take net damage right now. I know I do need to deny Tennin's ability, but there's not much I can do about it right now, unfortunately. I do not like giving my opponent free advancement counters. As mentioned earlier, I'm gonna get walled by Colossus. So if any of the central ice are Colossus, I might be in some trouble. But there's nothing I can do right now. I can't run centrals without risking taking a lot of damage, and this is a problem because my early draw saw no cloud breakers. Typically on your first pass you want to see lots of cloud breakers early so that you can apply some pressure while building up to your Maven. However, in this case I drew the Maven before any of the cloud breakers, which is kind of unfathomable, but this is bad because a Maven by itself does nothing. And I don't really want to install it now because it's a huge investment that doesn't pay off. If anything, it makes it harder for me to run archives. I can still run archives now, just taking a tag, getting the Temujin off, which is probably something I should do, but I really don't want to take a tag now. So I'm going to sack a Sports Hopper here, and I find Maxwell James and Aaron Marone. I'm going to get the Maxwell James down just for the link. Probably not going to use a trash ability, although that might depend on how the game pans out. Mostly because there's an upgrade on HQ, which is probably either Crisium Grid or Caprice Nisei, both of which will make triggering Maxwell James very difficult. For those of you who don't recall, Maxwell James requires a successful HQ run on the same turn in order to use the Trash Can ability, which de-reses remote ice. So yep, there you have it. The errand I put down just in case my opponent decides to fast advance something with Shipment from Tennin or Trick of Light. Then in that case I'll get 2 free counters and hopefully open the window for a Siphon. Instead my opponent goes for a remote, which is quite interesting. It tells me that they are not on pure fast advance, so that's something to keep note of. I still haven't found a single tech trader, which is annoying, so I'm going to draw for it again with my second Sports Hopper. I do finally find it, last card of the Sports Hopper, thank goodness for Geist's ability. We get the tech trader down and we're going to spy R&D and see an Obokata protocol. That's not something I can steal right now, given my breaker situation, so we're going to let that pass, but I do know it's now in the hand. Definitely want to play down the breakers as soon as I can, because then I can threaten HQ runs. So we get the Crowbar down, and yeah, hopefully we'll get a shift next turn. You also notice that I have a Dean list on the board, so I can actually contest any single Code Gate or Sentry with shift and Crowbar on the table. My opponent installs something in the remote. Am I going to contest it? Nope. The worst case is that the remote item is a Nisei. Nisei Mark II is not a good agenda for criminals in general, and that applies to Geist as well. It kind of stuffs my run-based events, but it also stuffs spy cam runs. It means I have to be able to run through twice in order to overcome the Nisei counter. So I find a Street Peddler that immediately goes down. Peddler is such a good card. I finally found my first one, and there's a spike on my Peddler. That's probably what I'm going to use the Peddler for. And I draw another spike, but I need the shift down. So now I have Crowbar, shift, and spike on the Peddler. With a Dean Lister, I should be able to get through most places. My opponent single advances the item in the remote, and I expect them to score the Nisei here. But they don't. Which is very curious. I definitely expected the Nisei score, and that would have set me very far back. But turns out they may not be running Nisei. It's quite interesting. I'm not sure if you want to run Nisei in Tennin Institute. On one hand, you can't really fast advance it very easily. On the other hand, it's such a strong agenda. Here, I noticed that my opponent used Jackson and did not install it in server 1. Instead, they use a naked remote. So this kind of tells me that server 1 is not very likely to be a Caprice, or they might be baiting me. And then I remembered that my earlier spy cam revealed an Obokata protocol on R&D to me. So I thought, oh, that is probably an Obokata, isn't it? There's a good chance it is, and I can steal it. I have the breakers I need with Dean Lister to get through, and if it's a barrier, my opponent might be lulled into a false sense of security into thinking that I can't break it. And yeah, turns out it was a Chiyashi. So my opponent might think that I can't break it, but in fact I do have the spike on Peddler, and yes, I am going to get through. I'm not going to take 4 net damage here. So I trigger Peddler here, which draws me a card from Geist. Then I'm going to use Dean Lister here, which draws me another card from Geist. Also pumps the strength of my spike to 10. So this easily allows me to get through the 3 subroutine Chiyashi, and I'm going to access. And is it going to be the Obokata? Yes, it is. Thank goodness I ran it. I had to pay the iron price of 4 net damage, but that's fine. The notable card that got trashed was the Maven. I lost Maven to Obokata Protocol, which means that I won't be able to have access to it until my second pass. This means that I'll have to rely on my Cloud Breakers for the foreseeable future. That's actually pretty bad news. This means I cannot apply as much pressure to Centrals as I need, which is a big problem, because with how defensive my opponent is with upgrades on HQ and R&D, I need multiple runs in order to clear the upgrades before rerunning it with Siphons and Temujins and the like. So because Cloud Breakers are one use, single use, I can't afford these multiple runs on Central. So the only thing I can actually do now is to camp the remote. That is literally the only thing I can do until I find my Maven again. In the meantime, my opponent fast advances with Shipment from Tennin, gets a Brain Trust going. So I can see that this is a hybrid fast advance, and I mean, it's mostly pure fast advance. If they're running Brain Trust, it's probably mostly fast advance. The Obokata is probably there as a 5-3 filler, which makes a lot of sense. So yeah, trying to scout out their agenda suite here so I know what to expect from them. And because their deck is most likely mostly fast advance, I need the source. So I'm going to dig through my deck for the source. I've already found the first thing I need, which is all 3 tech traders. I'm not gonna levy until I find all 3 tech traders, but I have. And the next thing I need is the source. So this peddler finds me same old thing, the source and Temujin contract. So almost certainly gonna use the peddler for the source here. But I'm not gonna pop it just yet. Gonna wait until my opponent gets lulled into a false insecurity. Gonna bait them out into fast advancing something and then pop the source on them when they least expect it. So you see there, I have stop written in the chat bar before my opponent fast advance. The moment they play the Trick of Light, I was like, mash enter button, stop. Do not make any actions. Since they played Trick of Light, of course they get to resolve the Trick of Light first. They get to move 2 counters there. But after that, they have to pass priority to me, at which point I will liberate the source from Peddler. So yep, I let them do the Trick of Light, and then the source comes in. So now they cannot fast advance that 3-2 they were intending to. Yep. If it was a 3-2, say a Brain Trust or Philotic, they would have to use another fast advance card, which it seemed to not have. So they do the next best thing, which is to use Jackson and override the agenda they just installed there. So they lost 1 fast advance tool, they lost 2 advancement counters on the Outer HQ Ice, and they lost a Jackson. I think that was a pretty good turn for me. Honestly though, I think I would have actually left the agenda in there and tried to ice it up, but I guess my opponent had no ice at that point, because I couldn't actually break Xiaoxi. Well, I could, I did have the Team Distant in hand, so I actually could get in there, but yeah, I guess this was a safe play from my opponent. Unfortunately for them, the source makes it really difficult for them to fulfill their fast advance plans. So all I need to do now is to lock down the remote while I search through my deck with the second levy. Speaking of the levy has been played. So now I'm digging for the Maven. My opponent advances a Chiyashi. Not gonna do much, but it does power up the mass commercialization, which is gonna give them, oh gosh, 14 credits. Yeah, okay, so these siphons in my hand, probably not gonna do much. Siphon is mainly there to keep the court poor so they can't rest big ice, but given the state of their board with so many advanced ice, I don't think I can keep them poor this game, and I don't need the siphon money that much. Even though I'm holding 2 counters on Aaron, and I'm ready to siphon at any time, but given they have so many upgrades on HQ, and I only have very limited number of runs on HQ, I don't think siphon's gonna do very much here. In fact, I'm so poor at this point that I'm actually forced to use one of my shifts just to get through archives. I need to ration my Cloud Breakers for the rest of this game. I have no more recursion left. I've used my levy. So any breakers that hit the bin this point are dead forever. And I need a critical mass of breakers in order for Maven to be useful. So I need to conserve my Cloud Breakers at this point. I'm also starting to worry about AI hate. This is a very huge problem for this deck that I did not identify until playing this game. I started thinking, what is the worst ice that my opponent can hit me with? And turns out there's a lot of nasty worst case scenarios. Okay, so we know that Colossus is a big problem. My opponent is triple advancing the Colossus on archives now, which means that a shift might not be able to get through. But more importantly, Hortum is gonna wall my Maven. I have to use crowbars to break it, and I only have 3 crowbars left for the rest of the entire game. Swordsman is gonna wall me. I need to use shift to get through Swordsman because I can't break it with Maven, which means I only have 1 or 2 Swordsman breaks left. So I'm in actually a very terrible position, pending the kind of ice that my opponent is running. This is actually really tenuous. I'm even though my opponent I've disabled my opponent's fast advance mode, I need to be really, really careful with choosing my runs, because one wrong run on the server can cost me the game. There is a shift on my peddler, and that is almost certainly what I'm going to use the peddler for. At this point, every breaker counts. The breakers are more important than Temujins, more important than Fall Guys. In fact, they're the most important part of the deck at this point. I'm still digging for my Maven. 5 cards left in deck? I can't see clearly, but I still haven't found my Maven. I found 7 Cloud Breakers, and there's an 8th in the bin. I used the shift for Archive Colossus, and I still haven't found my Maven. This is terrible. Running out of cards against Jinteki is probably not a good idea, but I have no choice. I can't run until I find my Maven. I cannot afford to lose my breakers anymore. My Cloud Breakers. They are there to power up Maven. For the rest of this game, I have to use Maven to break ice, which is why I'm running Temujin in this deck, because at some point, after your second pass, you can't really afford to use trash cans anymore because you've run out of trash cans to use. They're limited use, so you need something more that gives you more longevity, and Temujin is exactly that. Now I finally found my Maven, and I think I only have 2 cards left in stack at this point. So now it's a frantic, or rather a last-ditch run on R&D. Maybe scout out some of the ice. They have 61 credits. I think they're freaking 61 credits! Ah, best commercialization, so good. Okay, so I'm not sure why I'm running R&D here. I guess the main thing I want from this R&D run is to actually force them to rest the Caprice that's on R&D. I bet that's a Caprice. It's probably not a Chrysium, given that I haven't shown Deep Data Mining, which is a common card you run in Geist. So I expect that to be a Caprice, and I want them to force rest the Caprice so that they can't have Caprice on R&D and HQ at the same time. It's unique after all. Unfortunately, to force this Caprice rest, at what cost? I had to pay through 2 DNA trackers. Jeez. And then there's a macrophage at the end of the server. So I misplayed this. I allow my opponent to fire the entire macrophage, including the last subroutine, which actually is relevant here. I'm only on 6 credits. My opponent's on 42. They can easily pump macrophage to the point where it ends the run. So what I should have done was to break the last sub of macrophage using Maven, but yeah, I'm not used to having a base 8 strength breaker at my disposal, so that was my mistake. I should have broken the last routine. I did not, and my opponent paid into the trace to keep me out of the server. Pretty smart. On the other hand, they did not rest the upgrade on R&D, so this tells me that the base upgrade on R&D is not a Caprice Nisei. So, well, that's good information. But sadly, I am denied the R&D access. Not that it really matters because I did not use Spy Cam there, so I did not know whether the R&D card was an agenda or not. So obviously, being on low credits, my only play is to click for 4 every turn until they start jamming something in the remote. Speaking of that, I'm now gonna put myself in my opponent's shoes and wonder what is their out. Because usually, they win by fast advancing, but I've turned off fast advance with the source and a 4 guy on the table. So that's why Tennin is somewhat powerful, because they have a very strong dual mode. Even if fast advance is completely shut off, they still have the alternative of playing Glacier style, and that's exactly what they did with their turn. They installed a remote ice, the outer one, and double advanced it, which tells me that that's probably a Colossus or Horum. Either way, I'm gonna get walled from that server pretty soon. So that is their out. They're playing towards a Glacier style remote. And the last thing I want to see is a Caprice Nisei on the remote, because that completely wrecks me. That is something that my deck doesn't deal with very well without Rumor Mill or Political Operative. Why am I not running Polop? Who knows? No deck slots. Okay, they jam something in the remote. Is it go time? I ask myself. The answer is no. Why? Because I want to run HQ instead. I'm going to apply a fork technique. The problem with running the remote is that it looks too much like a bait. That could easily be Caprice. That could easily be a spare Chrysium. That could easily be a third Jackson Howard. I cannot afford to run the remote and then, have the run be not worth anything. There's a very high chance that my opponent is never advance baiting me there. So, yeah, running through a 4 advance card is not something I want to deal with. So instead I'm going for HQ. This allows me to hopefully clear the upgrades on HQ and apply a fork. Unfortunately, I see the worst case upgrades on HQ, which is Caprice into Chrysium. So the legwork is definitely going to fizzle, but I still want the HQ access, hopefully win the side game on Caprice. Now it's in a Horum on HQ. So this means I only have 2 HQ runs remaining, having to use 1 crowbar here. I'm going to bid for the side game and I need to win this side game. If I don't, HQ is kind of locked out to me. Thank goodness the 1 bid was correct. I'm not going to go into explaining side bids here, but yeah, I did have a feeling they wouldn't bid to because the legwork was going to fail anyway and it wasn't a super high impact run, or so they thought. So because of this, I'm able to run through the server, clear all the trash on HQ, and I access a Cerebral Static from hand. Whew! Wow, at least they didn't play that on turn 1. A Cerebral Static on turn 1 against me would have been so good. Alright, now I ask myself, do I run the remote? No, they're still pretty rich. 15 credits. Nah. Instead, what I do here is to actually continue setting up my board state. I could have went in for a legwork here, but I chose not to. Because I wanted to see what was in that remote. So yeah, here's the thing. If they do advance the item in the remote, I'm going to attack the HQ. If they decide to show up the HQ instead, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. My play might have been rather iffy here. But I chose not to go for the remote, and it did turn out to be an agenda. And yeah, they are going to be able to advance that. So they had to spend a Trick of Light there, which is a very huge investment, and then double advance it. This is not an Obo Carter. With 5 advancements, they can't score an Obo Carter. They need 6 advancements on it thanks to the source. So instead, it is a Medical Breakthrough. That's a 4-2. It becomes a 5-2 with the source. And I get to keep the source on the table because I use Fall Guy there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if they go for the score on the remote, it means that they leave the HQ vulnerable. But again, I have very limited HQ runs because of Kakugo. I only have exactly 2 runs left on HQ between Horton and Kakugo. So every run has to count. Between Siphon and Legwork, it seemed obvious that Legwork was the go-to card here because I need 2 agendas to win, and hopefully the 2 agendas are in his hand. He hasn't scored for quite a long time, so let's see what we have. We have Obo Carter. I either pay 3 credits and 4 net damage to steal, or I host it on Film Critic. Obvious choice. Second card, Cerebral Static. Third card is the winning agenda, the Medical Breakthrough. So all I need to do is steal it here, pay the 3 credits, trash the source, and liberate the Obo Carter off Film Critic for the game. Whew! Wow! Wow, that was a very close game. Had I not won the Capri side game on HQ, had I not accessed both agendas on that Legwork run, I probably would have gotten completely walled out by his superior Advanced Ice. Who knew Wayland Ice was this good? Colossus and Horton actually gave my opponent a very strong Glacier mode, counteracted by the fact that they could not fast advance thanks to the source. In fact, it's because of this I counter you, you counter me interaction that I feel that this is actually a very interesting matchup, one which actually produced a very interesting game in my opinion. Furthermore, I think my opponent actually has the upper hand in terms of percentage chance to win. Had they known that I was playing anti-fast advance from turn 1, had they gone for their Glacier mode from the beginning of the game instead, I would have had a very hard time contesting them. Something like a Chiyashi remote into Caprice, that is something I could not contest. Instead, what happened was my opponent was caught off guard by my source, and even furthermore, above that, a source hidden on a street peddler. That is just very dirty, and my opponent actually lost a lot of tempo and a lot of, they weren't able to score what I presume was either a Brain Trust or a Philotic Entanglement. They would have loved to score it there. So yeah, I just got very lucky there. I hope you enjoyed this game. For those of you who didn't, please don't unsubscribe. You'll make me very sad. In the meantime, thanks for watching and happy net running. Oh, one more thing. I'm supposed to actually give my review and discuss Maven and whether it's a good card or not. Well, we'll do that next episode since we're running out of time. That will be episode 7B of Successful Demo, where I continue messing around with Maven. So stay tuned for that, where I'll give my post-analysis on Maven. Alright, goodbye everyone.